Okay, welcome everyone to part two, or the second offering of this series, The Garden of the Soul. And the title that was given, that was received, is called Ascension, the Descent of the Dove, and the Preparation of the 6 plants in biodynamic farming to create the flower of life. So that's a big mouthful, isn't it? It's a big, fat mouthful of 3 areas that perhaps aren't necessarily in our habitual frame of thinking, connected with one another. So we're going to just take a second to connect our hearts, the hearts in our circle, the hearts of the people that are physically here holding space and energy, that are absolutely as important as the person speaking, in this case me. That the energetics of a circle is primarily there in order to connect us more deeply into who we are, since there are parts of us that are revealed through the hearts of others, and that this circle is able to connect to the universe. So we're going to open our hearts, feel the beating of our hearts, and then connect to one another and to those participating in whatever form into this opening of this age that's absolutely extraordinary, that is awakening amongst us all, in which we're realigning, finding, discovering, unveiling. We can utilize the words that we like, into this undeniable reality of spirit and soul, into the invisible. So we're going to take a moment to feel that within ourselves. And once again, I'm asking each one of you to give yourselves permission to utilize your imaginations, to open that faculty up, so that your uniqueness, your capacity to receive and offer images of the soul is operating. So the imagination is what enables us to communicate the easiest in this domain. Automatically, it brings us into a connection and offers the means to communicate that to others that are living perhaps a very diverse experience. So in reality, we're all creative, artistic, evolving, expanding beings. So I'm inviting us all to consider oneself through that light. And I'm inviting us all to consider for just a few moments all of creation such as that. That all of creation is living connection, creation, expansion, eternal life that renews constantly. So thank you for allowing us to enter into this circle and once again create this quintessence, this seed. We're offering a seed for all of humanity. And so let us remember, if we possibly can, 5 weeks ago, in which we worked with this connection on a cosmic level of Aries as a representative, as an active representative of the divine masculine principle, of Taurus as an active receptor and focal point of creation to receive this creative impulse. And that at a certain time every year, there's a meeting with the sun in Aries and the moon entering into Taurus, in which these two principles align, and it's a meeting in which what we call the Philosopher's Stone has its maximum capacity to operate, to be created, to be enhanced upon, to be amplified, etc. And we looked into the different properties, the interactions of these two principles in relationship to the cosmos, this big picture in the evolution of the Earth, and we looked upon it in the little picture of our garden, of this need for our garden and the food that we eat receive these influences, maximum influences, so our food is impregnated with the Philosopher's Stone. And so we saw that Rudolf Steiner, in the creation of what we call now biodynamic farming, which was in 1925, it was his last cycle of lectures. Imagine, before that, he had already inseminated or seeded the medicine, the anthroposophic medicine circle, the threefold social order, the Waldorf schools, the anthroposophic movement, and this was this last offering in which he put it off. Why? Because his life energy wasn't his maximum. He was being advised, absolutely do not travel. You'd be completely a fool if you traveled. You might not get to where you're going. Yet, always the guidance was so strong and the invitation was aligned that he traveled to Germany and gave this cycle of lectures that became the fundamental cornerstone of biodynamic farming. And why? Well, in the introduction to all this, the 10-minute introduction, if you listen to it, but if not, it is recorded and you can hear that. He was asked the question, well, with everything that's been given to humanity, all these avatars, these great masters, all the teachings, how come humanity were still in this quagmire? We had to pass through a First World War, and that's not new. People have been fighting forever. And it doesn't seem like we're able to assimilate these truths, this love, these examples. And so he answered quite simply. He said, because human beings are not being nourished correctly. They're not receiving these energies that are coming from the cosmos, no longer receiving them. The layer is so thick that those energies can't come through. The life force can, but the energies from the cosmos coming through the spiritual hierarchies, they're not coming through. And since they're not coming through, this energy from the Christ consciousness, this higher self energy, this solar energy that now is traveling through the Earth's consciousness, because what? We know the future of the Earth is to become a sun. for this new age to be put into practice, we need to become beings of light. So the earth, obviously, its future is to become a sun. So that's what he answered. We're not being nourished. And this is why I'm giving these principles. So to read the lectures, these 10 lectures, there are actually 9 with the 10th that's kind of a resume, a synthesis of these 9 lectures, is fundamentally important if we want to go deeper into it. If we want to see how are these cosmic events, how are they able to touch something so dense as our physical food that we nourish our bodies with? And how can we put our physical bodies in harmony with the other bodies that are in our physical vehicle? Because, we do have other bodies. What a revelation, you see? But all these things have been communicated. They're all there. We can study them. They're given in many, many different ways and facets. But the actual reality of nourishing oneself, we can't go around that. Our physical bodies need to nourish themselves. Even if we don't take in physical food, we're still receiving food through water, air, and light. And if we take out water, a physicality that's the next least subtle, then we can't take out air and light. Why? Because air and light carry the energies of our soul. They're carrying these energies. So when we talk about now ascension and the descent of the dove, that happens 40 and 50 days respectively after this event of resurrection, of rebirth, of eternal life coming back into this dense physical plane. Remember, this evolution of the earth now, for the time being, needs this alternance of birth and rebirth. It's essential. And our gardens show us that. Even in Hawaii, there are 2 seasons. There's wet and windy and dry and hot. And there are cycles. And there's energies that come in that prosper the life force to externalize, to bring forth, to grow. And what's its destination? Obviously, to wither, to create the seed, so that all the energies go back within. These cycles are essential. And so we need to get to know these cycles. This is our study. This is our study, why we've been incarnated. We need to become plants. We need to be able to receive the light of the sun and work on the mineral kingdom. So in my little introduction to these lectures, I talked about that in the previous incarnations of the earth, as the sun and the moon, that this is where the plant and the animal, you could say, archetypes, energetics that have now physically incarnated in our reality in order to do what? In order to co-create with us this transformation of the earth on the physical plane into something less dense. Still material, but less dense. And the plants and the animals are offering us these gifts that they elaborated on the sun and the moon, incarnations of the earth. In what? What are their gifts that they're offering us? Well, obviously, for the plants, it's simple. They're offering us oxygen. That's a no-brainer. And the animals, they're offering us a lot of byproducts. But not only that, they're offering us the ability to communicate with the elemental kingdoms. In other words, to the subtle realms. The animals enable us, even though human beings, we in our incarnation in this density, we've created layers that have stopped this communication with the elemental world. The animal kingdom offers us that through all the different gifts and qualities and ways in which they live on earth. So as we enter into communication with the animal and plant kingdom, and we're able to utilize them and communicate with them and co-create with them, naturally we re-enhance our communication with the invisible world. So we're in now this big picture, and we're approaching the little picture of ascension and the descent of the dove. So we're in the middle of these two periods. You know, generally speaking, in the Christian Judaic world, this is done on a Sunday. So last Sunday was the celebration of Ascension, and this coming Sunday will be what we call Pentecost, or this descent of energies. And what happens? Oh, we can talk in something that we never could understand before. So in other words, this invisible world is able to reach us, and we're able to understand. This Pentecost is one of the least appreciated, recognized celebrations for the time being in human evolution. Why? Because humanity does not want to understand one another, because they don't understand themselves yet. They've lost communication with this self, with this solar entity of their higher self. So biodynamic farming, the principles that govern biodynamic farming, are there to enable us to create within us a blueprint in which the revelation of who we are and the language in which nature speaks becomes comprehensible one more time, or once again. So in my little preparation for this talk, it just so happened that a very dear friend of mine guides shamanic journeys, not with plant medicine, but just with intention, with drum, with allowing ourselves to enter much deeper into the natural kingdoms, the invisible realms, and greet the guides, the beings that sometimes are new, but sometimes have accompanied us on our soul journey, on our evolution, and are constantly there to realign, assist our soul purpose here on earth. So, last Sunday, the day of Ascension, I found myself in a shamanic journey that we've been working as a group for over a year or so, and I've known this person for an extremely long time. This type of work, I feel, is absolutely essential. Absolutely. And it will become the cornerstone of education in the future. How do we develop a relationship with other beings that exist, the unseen beings? Because as we can develop a relationship with these unseen beings, automatically we enter into a rapport with all the diversity of human beings here on the physical plane. And we start understanding one another, co-creating with one another, and cooperating, supporting. So in this journey, as she gave the intention for this shamanic journey that we were all undertaking, she said, just look at, in daily life, the elemental kingdom, was a part of daily life. And look at the shoemakers. They had shoe elves that were there. And at nighttime, these shoe elves would come and they would continue the work. And when they showed up in the morning, oh, they were so appreciative. Or sometimes, they played little tricks on the shoemaker. I remember distinctly when I was a child. Distinctly. We had a shoemaker place in our little village where I grew up. And I remember it was in the down, in a basement. Yet you had to go down in this basement underneath stores. Yet it would look out on another side. It was on the side of a hill. It wasn't completely underground. And I remember the odors, and I remember walking in and seeing all the elves. Seeing them just dancing all around. And when she said that, I completely relived that experience. Do we believe that? Can we incorporate that while we're doing our serious things of growing food, of weeding plants, of planting a garden, of pruning trees, of doing the countless things that either we have to do or we love doing? Can we include this rapport, this relationship? Because if we cannot create this container in ourselves, then everything else that we're going to be talking about and that we're going to study together won't be able to descend. Why? Because our mental concepts will push it away. It won't allow it exactly the same way as chemical fertilizer does. It creates ionizations that don't permit elements that we call trace elements. That there's a tiny, tiny trace, but it's absolutely essential. So exactly what we're talking about with biodynamic farming. We're talking about this mass of green, this mass of animal waste, and these tiny little plant preparations. Tiny, tiny dosages. So the whole basis of homeopathic. Now, our society is absolutely based upon quantity. It cannot accept that. I'm just saying, now there's a growing number that are opening. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just talking generally speaking. Generally speaking, every single institution is based on what? Quantity. Why? Why? Because we live in lack. We don't believe that we're connected to an eternal life force. The whole basis of biodynamic farming is saying that we are connected to a life force and that we're creating a space in order to receive it. So this is the fundamental, this is the principle in which Rudolf Steiner started his lectures with. And he came back to it constantly. And Mikhail Ivanov, he also talked about food. He also talked about eating. He also, and constantly coming back to, we need to create a container. We need to create a container that is the highest vibrations possible in order to receive these higher vibrations that are possible. So this is the work that we're proposing for us all to enter more deeply into that. So during this time that the sun enters into Gemini, that we have this surabundance of energy, and it's creating one of the best conditions for the human soul to raise its consciousness. Why? Because it's living in abundance. Just look at on the physical plane, generally speaking. Generally speaking, when we believe we have enough, life is easy. You see? The problem is that a lot of human beings don't know when enough is enough. You see, they've been so educated in lack that what is enough? What is enough for the human organism in which it can enhance itself constantly? It can live a beautiful life. And for our garden, what is enough? What is enough that our garden can thrive? So, as I said before, I prepared myself in this shamanic journey that was just last Sunday, a couple of days ago. And when she talked about these elementals and said, just think, they're no longer present. Why? Because these professions are no longer present. These are the choices that human beings are making. It's absolutely astounding. And when I was very young, I understood that. Why did I understand it? Was it because I was smarter, more evolved, blessed, or whatever? No. It's because in past incarnations, I understood it. I brought that with me. The insanity of today, the insanity of how our life is based, in order to recognize that deeply on what really is the insanity. In other words, the insanity that we're separate from one another. We're separate from the universe. And since we're separate from the universe, and since we're going to die and we're no longer going to be there, then survival is absolutely a necessity. Absolutely. And it gives us the right to do anything we want for survival. There is no moral obligation to the world in which we're living in. Responsibility, take out the word obligation, or pact, or I don't know, communion. Isn't it extraordinary? When we take a look, we see that this is the world. And imagine, in 1925, Rudolf Steiner said, "You haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen anything yet." If we as humanity do not start making choices, and what were the choices? Well, he spoke in a specific language. He said, the choice is recognizing the Christ. Well, the Christ we can replace by recognizing our higher self. We can replace it by recognizing this spirit that we have within ourselves, that our body is just a vehicle. So as we understand that, we realize that these professions that were there, like the shoemaker, like agriculture, like building our homes, like all the crafts that were there in which we could invest our energies in and enter into a living relationship with, they attracted elemental beings. Elemental beings rejoice themselves. And in the Hawaiian tradition, these elemental beings, one of the names for them are Menehunians. And it was absolutely known as, it's still talked about in the Hawaiian culture today by most every Hawaiian, that at nighttime the Menehunians come and they do your work, and you leave them something, you offer them something. And that tradition of offering the elementals something was known by everyone in all different cultures. This is what we're talking about working with plant preparations. It's not a thing. It's not a formula. It's not to obtain something. All biodynamic farming is not to obtain something. It's to enter more deeply into relationship with who we are and what is the universe, this life of the universe. So when I was young, I didn't talk like this. I didn't talk about this at all. I lived it on the inside. And I expressed myself how? I expressed myself because I never lost connection with these invisible beings. And my desire as I entered into farming on a professional basis, by growing enormous amount of food. I had over 5 acres of covered greenhouse, 15 acres of vineyards. We're making wine and grape juice, all different, I don't know how many acres of orchards, etc., and field crops, blah, 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 cereals to make bread. So I was the manager of all that. Yet inside of myself, always this desire was to, oh my God, what a gift this food is. And everyone that saw me, and Sabrina's right here, she witnessed it. They looked at me and they go, this guy is completely crazy. He's off his rocker. How can you be having so much fun? Because this is what I was living, and I've never lost that. Ever, I thank God. And why is that? Because I was prepared. Well, I have other challenges in this lifetime, believe me. We all have challenges. But this, if you're on this Zoom, and the Zoom will be recorded so other people will be able to hear it, that means our soul is open to this. It's absolutely open to this. And so this is our imagination. Our imaginations are inviting us to penetrate. So there was something that I did always when I was very young, and then it was verified by my teacher, the first teacher, Omra Mikhail Ivanov, that I met and that I had at a very young age. He said, I started understanding a little bit about life when I rejected every single thought I had within me. That's when I started understanding and replacing them with thoughts of a higher vibration. And so that's what happened when I first came in contact at a very young age with the biodynamic lectures of Rudolf Steiner. I went, what was this guy living during this time? How in the world is he talking about nitrogen and carbon and helium and oxygen, these things, and he's giving them like hologram and sacred geometry. He's talking about the cosmos and all this. I'm going, where did that come from? How is this capable? I went, that's what I want. That's what I want. I don't want to follow what he's saying. I want to live what he's saying. The rest will take care of itself. And since I'm extremely impulsive, I've become a little less, well, maybe if you ask my wife, she's going to have a different opinion. But let's just say I have, that I've become a little less impulsive. Then at that time, I can now integrate this into a cohesive life way. But before, I would just like go, wow, and I would try anything. It didn't matter to me. Success, failure, who cares? It's the living experience. And I realized I was touching something that was so important. What I needed to learn was something different. You see? So this is what I can give. I can invite each one of you to experience this. Plunge yourself completely into this world. When clairvoyance and Rudolf Steiner and other beings, Omra Mikhail Ivanov one time, he was like, he came after a sunrise and he was laughing and he was going, you have no ideas. All the gnomes are running and pulling my hair every which way and hanging on my beard and like a trapeze, and they're doing all these somersaults. He's talking like that. Completely. So we have the right to live that. We have an invitation to raise our consciousness and leave the prison of this necessity of thinking that this is what we have to do. We have to earn our living. In order to survive, we have to eat. Yet, what these initiates are talking about, what these all through all different cultures, they're saying that eating is a ceremony. Eating is a sacrament. Is what we're doing is we're committing ourselves to the act of creation. And even when we reject the things that physically are no longer assimilated by our body, which is a huge quantity, we're also offering something to creation. And so I remember distinctly when Omar Mikhail Ivanhoff, he talked about that. He talked about this is how the humans, they communicate with worms. He said, you think that we don't communicate? Look at what the worms do for us. So we also need to offer something to them. Yet, what are human beings? What have we done with that? You see? This isn't new. What's new is for us to now regain this sovereignty. Regain it, and not only regain it, proclaim it. How? Well, through our actions, through our life, through our enjoyment, through our abilities to rejoice in this creative process of life. So here we have Ascension entering into this domain of the Akasha Chronicle, understanding how life is arranged, this creation, on a high vibratory level, to the best of our ability. And then this descent that's happening in a few days, that we're able to incorporate that, assimilate that. Well, this assimilation, the alchemy of a human being, is the most neglected science that exists. That's just it. So what are we talking about? The 6 plant preparations. We're talking about we're using the 6 plant preparations with cow manure, if we can. If we can. And if not, any type of manure, any type of an animal. Why? Because the animal kingdom is able to communicate to us these qualities coming from the moon. We already talked about that at the beginning of this. So we need to have this big picture. Well, in order to have this big picture, it doesn't have to be in the language of Rudolf Steiner or Omar Mikhail Ivanhoff or anyone. Yet we need to be able to have an image of creation inside of ourselves, something that in cultures was constantly passed down. The story of creation was always recited orally. Everyone knew it by heart. Do we know the story of creation? Can we sing the story of creation to ourselves? Can we sing our story of creation, the story of our soul? Do we know the names of our soul, the resonance of our soul? Do we even want to know them? I definitely want to know them. So that's what I did. That's what I did in my life. And my lessons, well, if I'm going to talk about me, my lessons was, how did it come out of me? I had to understand that I was responsible, not only what I was living inside of myself, but what was coming out of myself. So I had fun with that. You see? So this is what we're talking about now. We're talking about linking these worlds together. And so everyone now knows about the work of Dr. Emoto. Dr. Emoto, that's worked on intentions in words on water, just water. And that if you freeze that water, or if you create a process, that water will take on geometric forms. And if it's a quality, a virtue, a high vibration, it has a geometric form that's absolutely extraordinary. And if not, well, it's disharmonious. And we all applaud that, and it's absolutely beautiful. And now we've gone even further. There are people doing extraordinary work in crystal, I don't know what it's called, but it has a very big, sumptuous name. Yet the third part about creating the flower of life in ourselves, can we become that? Can we become a sacred geometrical form? And that's what a biodynamic compost is assisting us in. And in the introduction to this class, I said, only if we have the desire and we strive towards that, if we put our energies in that way, that's when things become extraordinary. So, if you permit me, I would like to read something by Rudolf Steiner that was taken in a text, one of his lectures he gave on this era that we've entered into, which is called the Michaelic era. It's probably got a different name than that, but it's devoted to Archangel Michael, that is now the regent, the planetary governing force for the evolution of Earth since 1849, and entered into now creating this template for what? For the Golden Age, for peace, for harmony. He said, it is thoroughly dangerous. And then he said the word physiologically speaking. So he's talking about it's dangerous for our physical bodies. Can you imagine? To continue clinging to the idea, just the idea of natural necessity. Can you imagine? It's dangerous to our physical bodies to cling to the idea of natural necessity. In other words, natural meaning that if we don't get all these natural things, we're going to die. It's absolutely necessary. To the kind of fatalism implicit in the doctrine of necessity. So there's a doctrine of necessity. Of course, that's what's taught. The doctrine of necessity. Isn't that extraordinary? We're all doctors of necessity. We've been educated in the school of necessity, and we've graduated. All of us have graduated with honors, believe me. For to be educated both in school and in the rest of life. So he's not just talking about this happens in school. You know, a little kid, victim, put into the doctrine of necessity, but it continues for the rest of life by concepts based merely on natural necessity, on the omnipotence of natural necessity weakens human heads. Can you imagine Rudolf Steiner? I mean, he doesn't hide behind words. He has a lot of them, many more than I do. And he runs on sentences very long, even longer than me, but maybe we're about the same. But you see, he's talking about that this necessity weakens the capacity. So in past lifetimes, if we're able, those that are listening and those that you meet are able to accept that creation is alive, just that we're all linked to one another. We've come from a school of abundance in a past lifetime. Something within us has been nourished, and we're bringing that into this lifetime. Okay, we're not perfect. Other things are coming from lack, but at least that. And our mental capacities aren't weakened, they're strong, because they have to be strong to push away this limits of insanity that want to smother the flowering of the human soul. Thereby, human consciousness becomes so passive that other forces take over. So, necessity has a goal, that we become passive so other forces take over. Can you imagine? All you have to do is look and see it. And see it. And what happens in the war? What are we trying to do? We want to cut the life force, the abundance of the other country, so we can take over. Well, that's what's happening in the invisible world. So we need to be able to educate ourselves that we are receiving constantly an abundance of life energy, of life force, of creative energy. And this is what we do as gardeners. And if we have weed plants, if we have this or that, it's no big deal. We do our best to correct it. And the same thing within ourselves. But at the base of our belief systems are this ascension and descent of the dove. These things are archetypes for the human soul that have a power that's beyond anything we can possibly imagine. And in the language of Omar Mikhail Ivanov, he calls these egregores. The egregore, this big, huge reservoir, planetary reservoir of the descent of the dove, is an power and a strength that's beyond anything we can imagine. And if we can participate in it, if we can put our best foot forward and go, yes, I will receive this. I will receive this imprint of the dove. Then we start participating in this power of rejuvenation of the human soul here in incarnation, because the human soul is eternal. We know that. So, and thus human beings lose the strength they need, in the language of Rudolf Steiner, for the Christ impulse. In other words, this creative impulse, this impulse that comes from our higher self, in its present form, to take its intended place in the human soul. So it has an intention. It has an intention. So if we align ourselves, that's the whole thing with Ascension, is to find this world of intention, that things are intended for us. So isn't that amazing? That paragraph, addressing necessity. So we have three, Omar Mikhail Ivanov gave three different categories in the evolution of human consciousness. He talked about necessity, which is this. Now we know what it is. He talked about liberty. Liberty is, he gave the image of being on like a train or a plane or something that has a destination, yet we're free in that destination to do different things. In necessity, we're not free. We're taken over. And then he has another category called providence. We're free. Absolutely free. So as a biodynamic farmer, this is the goal that we want to obtain for our garden, that the garden becomes a container for providence, that the people that visit, that we that visit, we're visited by these gifts, by this abundance, by this extraordinary thing, and we feel the presence, undeniable presence of the flower of life. This creative geometrical form that was on the temple of the pyramids. And it exists much, much, much more ancient than that. You see? So we are that in potential. And in certain areas, that's what we are. So these 6 plant preparations, that's their destiny. So we can either mechanically utilize them, make our compost. I have a big compost, personal, Greta and I, for our farm, for our little garden. And then we have a much bigger one for the biodynamic farm, in which I'm working on. Much bigger, in which there are cows. So in that, if we can do it mechanically, And now it's really extraordinary. When I started out making biodynamic compost, it was with the actual plants themselves that we would receive. I think I received it from the Maria Thun Institute. And we would put each plant in, and I think it was every meter and crisscross. You know, we did it with in Hawaiian we say o'o bar, and in French baramine, but it's a big, huge metal pole that's utilized to make holes in very hard things. And so we would do a hole and we put that in, and then we would water it with the oak bark. So these plants, all this, we can study if we want, you see. You know, I received a question after the thing, and the question asked, well, why don't you speak more in detail of biodynamic farming for those that don't know it? Well, that's not my goal. People can do it much better than me. My goal is to open up ourselves to participate in it, that our whole being vibrates in it, that we ourselves become those preparations. Have I arrived? No. I'm in the process. And that's why I do it. That's why I love doing it. And that's why I invite it. And my wife and I, we've developed together individually before we knew each other in this lifetime, obviously. And then when we came together, it was obvious for ourselves that the base of education is knowing how to grow one's food and build one's homes on all planes of consciousness. What do children do instinctively? Little babies, little kids. They create mud pies. They're so serious about offering you that to eat. For them, it's the most extraordinary thing they can offer you. They want to feed the world. They want to bring that abundance because they're saying, well, look at all the mud that's here. We'll never run out of food. You see? And then they build their home, their space of love. They want to feel protected, secure, invite people in. You see? And so that's the base, we feel, of our education, but on all the different planes of consciousness. But in the physical plane, it's an importance that's beyond any type of calculation. So I invite you all, just think, just a seed. What's a seed? And to plant a seed. It's a magic act. Absolutely extraordinary. Yet, for those watching, we do that, and we believe that. I'm not revealing anything that's mind-blowing, but just think of human consciousness. And that's where we need to amplify. Oh, my wife said we have 5 minutes in our hour. So, I hope today I have given you a desire to ascend, allow yourself to enter into these principles in which inspired these great masters and teachers. And then after that, become receptive and receive them. To do what? To elaborate your garden of the soul, to create this magical, geometrical, sacred geometry of the flower of life. And that if we have a physical garden in which to exercise ourselves, hallelujah, because it's magic. It's a window of the soul. So I'd like to finish with a song that I'll just read the words that I wrote a couple of years ago. I co-created an evening devoted to the nature spirits. And guess what that evening was called? The Garden of the Soul. And so this woman has an extraordinary gift of being able to communicate with nature spirits, ask them questions, allow them to solve different problems. She has tons of stories. And so for each of her stories, I wrote a piece of music with lyrics. And I had a group of 4 people that were a small little quartet that sang these songs. So this is called The Garden of the Soul. Enter in, come within the garden of the soul. Within the sacred garden, seeds of eternity, our earth opens her womb, receiving from infinity. My eyes behold such beauty of everything that grows, all in such symmetry, so much we do not know. The garden of our soul, how beautiful you are, always changing in timeless seasons, nourished by the stars. The garden of the soul, a sacred place to be, where many secrets are honored and held, revealing our own true self. Enter in, come within the garden of the soul. So many different qualities that ripen with warmth and light. As the sun sets, there is peace. Each plant welcomes the silence of night. Each one has their sacred place with spirit in the earth, and prepare with Mother Gaia a new age to be birthed. The garden of the soul, how beautiful you are, always changing in timeless seasons, nourished by the stars. The garden of the soul, a sacred place to be, where many secrets are honored and held, revealing our own true self. Enter in, come within the garden of the soul. Each moment, another lifetime, with many possibilities to plant the seeds and watch them grow, all in perfect harmony. The garden is there and awaits the gentle hands that caress. In reverence, all is a prayer, offering its life to bless. Each garden is there to flourish, a ray of paradise, to reveal its essence, spreading out the light. We are here to care for each garden of everyone, so that our dear planet radiates like the sun. The garden of our soul, how beautiful you are, always changing in timeless seasons, nourished by the stars. The garden of the soul, a sacred place to be, where many secrets are honored and held, revealing our own true self. Enter in, come within the garden of the soul. So thank you so much for being with this circle. Your essence, your soul essence, your imaginations, your inspirations, and your light, your enlightenment. And as we continue this journey of the garden of the soul, around the summer solstice, we'll examine this relationship with the 4 different elements and what they're linked to in their astrological signs, this rhythm that Maria Thun gave, and how we can work in harmony to ripen the qualities that we came in this incarnation. So, Sabrina, if there are any questions. Oops, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Richard. I want to share a picture that came to me towards the end of your presentation. When we pass over and we make our journey between death and birth, the other side of our existence, as we are transforming through all the planetary spheres and preparing to come back towards the end of our transformation, in essence, the highest beings, the highest of the hierarchy, the first hierarchies come towards us, and they act out our potentiality for our next life.
Mm.
They act out our entire life just before we are about ready to dive into the ocean of the world again. And they bring all the essence, all the forces, the strength and forces and love that we need to come here and do the work we need to do, because we need to come prepared. and as you were speaking, I'm thinking, this is what Richard is doing for us in this hour, is that you are acting out the other side in our material life of how to animate, how to be the container to animate these hierarchies within us.
Thank you.
To become the living form. I really felt you acted that out for us. Like you said, you didn't give us facts or data or repeat lines. You performed the becoming. That was such a gift that you brought to us, Richard. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such a gift to hear that acknowledged. The acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And I would also like to share something that Michelle has written in the chat box. She said, I love thinking of farming my soul.
Wow.
When we have our Monday groups, at the end of our study, we think about an exercise to do for the week out of our experience together. And Michelle's really good with articulating our exercises.
Beautiful.
And so I would say maybe we can take up this practice in the intervals between your presentations, as we await for what you have to bring us on St. John's. You all will have an update on that pretty soon, but Richard will return on St. John's. And maybe we can practice what does that mean for us as individuals to farm our own soul?
It's beautiful. That's beautiful.
How can we practice that? Can we practice that?
Yes, and I can offer you that as you give yourself real images, that's why the imagination is the beginning. Always. That real images that mean something to you. So for me to farm the soul, I wanted to prepare the best food that for my brothers and sisters in this community, I wanted them to have it even better than the food that was at our teacher's table. And so I had that image. This is what I could do. I can offer that. And I started seeing how that motivated. So give each one of you, give yourself something real, 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 real. And you'll see how your minds will try to fight you. No, 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 that's not real. You don't have the right to do that. So that's beautiful. It's beautiful that you're taking this work to heart as a small little group or big group, and that you're able to enhance one another through this. So if there are any other questions that anyone might have, or indications or desires that they would like to see elaborated on, or
And everybody can always email me their questions for Richard, and I can pass them along, and he can incorporate them into the future presentations to continue our work with the Garden of the Soul until Easter.
beautiful. Thank you. It's just such a honor for me to be within such elevated souls that are carrying the blueprint of the future humanity. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and participate in this beautiful circle, to experience the fruits that Richard can bring to us from gardening his soul his whole life. As Rainer Maria Rilke said, there is nothing so wise as a circle. May our circle continue to circulate and create beautiful forms upon forms upon forms. May we inspire each other. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye for now. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
New dawn, the song of Aquarius, the circle of universality, a time of sisterhood, of brotherhood throughout the land, a life filled with harmony, radiating purity. It is a new dawn, the song of Aquarius, the circle of universality, the time of sisterhood, of brotherhood throughout the land, a life filled